there is no reason for you as an athlete to ignore the race in its total form, which is swim, bike, run. I get feedback, and I always probably as well, is like, why are we swimming so much? Why are we swimming so much? Why are we swimming so much? It's because I want you to get on the bike to feel like you never swam. So you can bike comfortably at a power that you've earned and a fitness that you've worked hard to achieve, so that you can then get off your bike feeling like you can run your best, not survive, not just struggle your way through, not walk it, but run it.
Welcome.
Closing out 2019 on a high note.
On a high note.
Yeah, higher note than the Tennessee Vols did on Saturday. But welcome. We'll get into that in a second. I know. Welcome aboard, Crushing Iron Podcast 334. This is our 334th podcast. The last one we will release and produce here in 2019. It has been a great year. And hey, we appreciate you joining us. If it's your first time tuning in, thanks for stopping by. We know there's a lot of options out there in the quote-unquote triathlon podcast world, so appreciate you giving us the time. We cover all things triathlon, life, how they intersect, how they intertwine, how they complement each other, both as coaches and athletes. And I'm looking forward to today's podcast, like I have all of them, as we share a few of our personal insights.
Let's do it.
Thanks for and but hey, I do have to say, and again, if it's your first time listening, we'll ease into things. It's very much a conversational style format. No sponsors, no hacks, just free flowing conversation. But I am a Tennessee fan at heart, and Mike is a diehard bleeds Wisconsin Red for his Badgers, and they absolutely handed it to my Tennessee Vols basketball team on Saturday by, I think, the tune of 20 plus, which may have
biggest road Power 5 win in history.
Oh, that stinks. Yeah, I think you guys actually beat us by more points than we scored on the floor.
Seemed like it, man.
Yeah, it was a rough day. It was a rough day. It was a rough watch. But hey, you can't win them all, and when you don't, you can get blown out by 30. But no,
big relief for me. Big relief.
I know. It's big relief. You still, you guys are still crushing it and crushing my teams. I do have to say, I just we're recording this on Sunday, a day before I actually just got into Nashville. I'm picking up some friends at the airport early tomorrow morning, and I got to listen to my Miami Dolphins, whom the much maligned and often terrible Miami Dolphins, taking the upset and sticking it to the New England Patriots, taking away their bye week for the first time. And they're not going to have a bye for the first time in 10 years, which is insane. But anyway, just had to plug that in there for all you, bandwagon Patriots fans.
Ooh, you've got a couple of scrappy Badger linebackers I see down there.
Yes, dude, I'm telling you, man. Flores, who used to be a coach for the Patriots, he's the guy. I love the way he leads his team. Everybody kind of got into our team for quote unquote thinking they're going to tank it earlier this year by trading away a bunch of like dead money. But we got 3 first-round draft picks, and he's building a culture, and their team they look like they really enjoy playing for him, and they work hard. Everybody thought we're going to go winless, and I think that this was our 5th win of the year, which was always good to beat the Patriots. But yeah, lots of things to be considered there. And today, Mike and I usually, kind of go at this podcast from a coach's perspective, and the occasional athlete perspective, and you from the athlete perspective, and then sometimes the coach's perspective. But I kind of shot you a text this morning saying, instead of, as I am, and I will promise this, and you can put it in stone, we will start the year out. This coming Thursday, our first podcast in 2020 will be the How to Not Suck at Running 2.0 podcast, to complement the first one we listened to. So if you haven't listened, and again, if you're fairly new to the podcast and haven't, it is one of our most popular, if not the most popular podcast we've ever done. Go back and listen to it, take notes, and everything that we do in the podcast on Thursday will make a lot more sense. But today, I wanted to text Mike and said, hey, why don't we, for today's podcast, last one of the year, why don't we kind of do a little bit of reflection and go through a couple things that you and I have both learned just as athletes, not as coaches, but just as athletes ourselves this year. I don't think, obviously, I didn't race a lot this year. I mean, once. Compared to the year before. You raced, I know, Chattanooga 7.3 in Wisconsin, but I think even when you're not racing a ton, there's a lot to learn about yourself as an athlete. And I think as we've got emails and people have posted in our closed group on Facebook, and if you want to be a part of that, you can always search Crushing Iron Group. We'll let you in, but we always get comments and posts about people who are coming off taking breaks or currently are taking breaks or just kind of not racing a ton. So I thought it'd be good. I think it'd be something fun to do for us both to kind of look back and do a little introspection, because obviously with it being the new year coming up, everybody's going to want to project all the things they want to do perfectly and change their whole way they do things or fix things that they're doing now they don't like. And I thought it's always good, instead of just changing things and just spitting out what you want to do going forward, look back, see what you learned, and then if you want to, take that and see what you can do with it going forward. But I'll be happy to start, or you can chime in and get it started on your end.
Yeah. Before we get started, I am Mike, and he is Robbie. We are the co-hosts, and I am now the Pillsbury Doughboy. After
Christmas gluttony. Well, you are
Christmas gluttony.
Wisconsin, guys, basically.
That's what I learned. They like comfort food up here a lot.
They live off comfort food.
Yes.
But yeah, I am. I'm not too far behind you in terms of just care. Hey, listen. It's a lot cheaper and more fun than running with a weighted vest. That's how I see it. Okay, that's just how I see it. It's a lot more. You don't have to be that guy running on the treadmill or running the street with the weighted vest on. You could just look like the guy, cruising the cul-de-sac with dad bod, and that's kind of what I got going on right now. So, but yeah, I'm right there with you, buddy.
All right, why don't you start it off, and then maybe I'll get a better sense.
Well, so I mean,
types of things we learned.
Yeah. So what actually propelled this thought was you and I were texting back and forth last night. We were watching some of the two college playoff football games, and as we both did, we picked LSU to absolutely beat down Oklahoma, which wasn't even a game. It was more of an onslaught. And then we actually both picked Clemson to beat Ohio State, and we were kind of texting the first half, and then I woke up and quick story, I recorded it last night, as I usually do these big games because I'm just old and I like to get to sleep, and so I put it on record at half. Well, actually not even half, like a minute and a half before halftime, before Clemson scored their second touchdown. And I went to bed, I think it was like 16-7, and hit record, and I wake up this morning, and Allie got up before me, so she was going to bring up coffee, and I was like, I text literally and just said, don't worry about, doing coffee, I said, don't worry about bringing the coffee up. I'm going to come downstairs and watch the recorded football game this last night. And like the minute that I sent that, she texted, Clemson won by 6, and I was like, you got to be kidding me right now.
That's awesome.
I woke up, I didn't check Facebook, I didn't check my phone for anything besides a text or that, and she was like, bam, spoiler alert, Clemson wins by 6. But anyway, I went back and watched the game, and you and I were kind of chatting about, the Ohio State, are they going to blow it, and are they putting out too much energy in the first half? And it just reminded me, and obviously, this is something we talk about all the time on the podcast in terms of training and negative splitting, and in racing, you want to be able to set yourself up for success and finishing hard and finishing fast. And although I've only raced once this year, the one race I did here 2 weeks ago, I did an 18-mile trail race on Lookout Mountain here in Chattanooga, and very little trail race experience. But I was just reminded of how all endurance events are basically the same, and generally all sports. And how you approach the game and that mindset you have and how you want to execute is all very much the same. And I had a lot of people ask me, like, what was your goal going into this trail race? What did you want to learn? What you got? I said, listen, I just want to get my legs under me. I kind of want to feel my way out. And then because the last 3 to 4 miles of this race were, I think the last 3 miles you had 1,400 feet of elevation gain, and those last little bit. And I said, I just wanted to stay smart, get my legs under me, and then I wanted to be able to just give it whatever I had the last 3 or 4 miles and pass as many people as I could, which is the exact same mindset that we talk about a lot of times on podcasts in terms of racing with triathlon, or really racing any sport. You know, they always say, like, they have that quote, like, you know, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And what most of the time happens is most people get hit in the mouth in the first quarter, or they get hit in the mouth on the swim, and their plan is gone, or they punch the gun too quick on the bike, and their plan's at the window, and now they're panicking. And when you get hit in the mouth, and you will in every sport, endurance sports especially, because these events are so long, things are going to go bad, things are going to go rough. You want to have your wits about you. You want to have your energy about you. You want to have your confidence within you to know that you can withstand more punches and not lose the plan. And that was my only goal for this race. And the last 3 miles, I think I ended up passing 20 people just in the last 3 miles. And I went from 47th overall to 27th in just the last 3 miles.
Not that you're counting.
Not that I was.
Of course, I know. I'm kidding.
100%. Like, it was just one of those things where I was like, you know, it was because when you're going up the side of the mountain, you could, and with the switchbacks, you could see people up the mountain hiking, and I was like, I just want to start counting. I want to start picking them off to kind of, and then see more in front of me. And I was like, I just want to keep picking them off. And I didn't know where I ended up, but having gone back through that, I went basically from like 47th out of 133 to 27th out of 133, just from executing a plan that to me is just what you should do. And it just got me to thinking in terms of like how to reflect on the year. And also, it was just one race, but we talk about a lot of times on podcasts, is that you can outsmart fitness a lot of the times, but you can also outdumb your fitness as well. And when you look at triathlon specifically, and you see people walking the run, you see people going way too hard on the bike, or you see people not preparing well enough to swim well, and that affects their bike, and then obviously the domino effect of energy expenditure comes down the pipeline, and they find themselves walking the run, then obviously blame the run, is that if you have a good game plan, even when you do get hit in the mouth, and you will get punched in the gut, you'll get kicked in the shin, you'll get karate chopped in the trachea, you'll fall down and faint. Something's going to happen over the course of long distance racing. You're just going to feel that way. And I think you have one of my favorite quotes from Will Emery, who's a friend of ours, back in like one of our very first podcasts. I think he was talking about Ironman Louisville. And well, 2 things from that. One is he was like, you know, never trust your feelings because it's always going to change. But then that he basically runs like his first like 2 or 3 miles that one year he did Louisville, and ended up coming in like 10th overall, including the pros, just because executing the best is so oftentimes going to not only just allow yourself to perform the best, but you're going to catch so many people in front of you who just can't seem to wrap their minds around executing that as a plan, or just frankly don't have the patience enough, even though they know it works, the patience or the belief within themselves to execute that to the best of their ability. So that was one of the biggest lessons I learned this year. Again, was just, I don't know if it was I learned it was just more affirmation that approach of not just negative splitting, but patience and having the energy to withstand the punches and keep your plan instead of throwing it out the window is something that goes across really all sports. And that, anyway, the Clemson Ohio State got me thinking that in just terms of, you know, half the battle is getting to the start line and starting, but nothing matters. Nothing over the course of the game or the race or whatever it is until you win or until you cross the finish line. So it's all about the decisions you make, the effort, the execution, the sticking to your plan that's going to allow you hopefully to set yourself up for success when you actually break the tape or come across the finish line.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny how many of mine, I made a little list of like 5 things, and how many of them just sort of fall into that bucket. It's really, and it's for me, I kind of feel like it's not like I learned it this year. It was almost just, it's always reinforced learning, or it's like relearning or something like that, because or it's just experience, right? Because the more you go through it, the more it sort of sinks in. And I definitely made, I don't want to say mistakes, but I certainly have. I'm going to start off with this one because it was one of our greater discoveries about me, certainly, and I think it's worth revisiting in this, especially along this vein, is that I had always thought that I was, my strength was cycling, and I think that a lot of people have certain beliefs that certain things are strengths to them. Mm-hmm. And while I still kind of believe it is, just from a natural perspective, I feel pretty comfortable and content on the bike and everything like that. And I feel like I can go after it, but that doesn't mean that it is my strength going into particular races.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one was at Wisconsin was really where we learned this, is that I don't give it everything I have, I think, during training, I do maybe take it for granted a little bit. I think it's a pretty solid event for me, but it's not my strength in the sense that I don't work it up enough to maybe equal what is really my true strength is running, and that's just from playing maybe a lot of sports or something like that. But neither one of them I would consider a endurance strength per se, but I think I can pull running out a little bit better if I don't leave it on the course, on the bike. And that was really, once again, I learned that lesson, is that and I know this, we can talk about power meters all day, but I know the bike shape I'm in. I know when at least now I feel like I know when I'm pushing it too hard. And a lot of times I just one of the things I've historically got caught up in is that 6 hour number. And I've hit it my first time, and ever since then, anything slower than 6 hours, regardless of the conditions or anything like that, feels like a failure. So I need to really regroup on that and seriously look at what I'm looking for, because that's not the way to get my best race. I've proven that over and over. So look at your strengths and really figure it out.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great point in that so many athletes take their streaks for granted, and what ends up happening is they're ignorant about their strengths, or they're naive to the impact that not maximizing their strengths has on their subsequent weaknesses, that they never are able to fully, kind of get their full potential of what they can have when it comes to putting together a swim bike. I mean, I used to fall, right in line with that in terms of, swimming is my strength. But here's the thing is that when you look back, and I think a lot of athletes have this, because most people come into triathlon with some kind of background in one of the three. You swam, you biked, everybody can run, or you have some sort of familiarity with, you had mountain biking. that was like your first memory of like some kind of endurance sports. And I think we fall back on those that we grew up with because they're familiar, right? And so I think that's a normal tendency to have in terms of that's what comes natural. Swimming is my strength. I actually truly believe that I'm a better runner than I am a swimmer. Now, that's making all things equal. And things aren't equal, right? Because we grew up with certain sports that we turn to love. And, it's like, well, of course I'm a better swimmer. I spent, 14 years of my life, swimming year round. Yeah. And of course you're going to be better at it. But it doesn't mean, because I think everybody has a natural tendency to be better at one thing than they do another. And I think sometimes we neglect to hone in on that, again, just because of our athletic history. And so I used to always, early on in the sport would fall back on, I've got the swim thing down. So what I don't need to do is keep trying, because what's going to make a difference from dropping from, 125 hundreds to 120s? How much of that work is actually going to come back and be so much of a positive, and I'll just take that and spend it on bike and run. And while that's not a hollow, approach, there is, I think, some substance behind that. What you fail to understand, I think, and something that I had to learn very, very early on in my training, when I did my very first Ironman Florida back in like 2010 or 11, was you want to keep your strength. Because even if the gap from your strength to your weaknesses is huge, you'd never, because like one of the very first articles I ever remember reading in like Triathlete magazine back when it was worth actually picking up and subscribing to, was an article about Andy Potts, and they asked him about his training, because obviously he swam at University of Michigan, very decorated swimmer, and they're like, do you swim less because you need to work on your bike and your run? He said, no, I swim more. Because you never want to let go of your strength, and you never want to lose a weapon. And that, when I read that, I was like, God, that makes so much sense, because we have these things that we strengths. What oftentimes that means also is that we become comfortable with them. And anytime you become comfortable and you become kind of complacent with a quote unquote strength, Well, then now is it more of a strength, or has it become a liability in your
Yeah.
training? Because again, everything complements each other. Everything is a domino effect. Yes, there are three different sports, three different disciplines, three different types of specific things you need to work on, but they all affect each other because you don't get a break. Contrary to what your uncle across the table at Christmas probably thought, was that yes, we do in fact do these in consecutive order without breaks in between, on the same day. And the thing is that you have to focus on them all. And I think again, choosing to maximize your strength, and then again, when I'll just use the bike as an example, because you said that was you've always been, that's your comfort zone, is the bike. It's always been your comfort zone.
Hmm.
And but if you have or you think your weakness is the run, well, your run is going to become a significantly larger weakness if you don't have the strength that you should have on the bike to be able to withstand the beating you're about to take on the run, that some people would say is their weakness. And so again, I think it's a great lesson for what you just pointed out in terms of you have to pay attention to it all. You can't take anything for granted. And just because you're familiar with one doesn't mean it needs to be put on the back burner and something that doesn't deserve your attention to detail.
Yeah. In your example, and I've been rewriting and proofreading our soon to be out How to Not Suck at Swimming ebook PDF. And I was reminded many times in there about what you're just talking about. And you're like a guy that could, probably after a couple of weeks go out there and swim a 120 or whatever you were saying in Ironman. But then after that, you're going to whatever. But, the big point of the ebook is the cascading effect of how the swim affects the bike affects the run. And it's the same principle. It's like, it's not even as much as you can't swim that 120 as much as can you swim that 120 with like really easy effort. And that's my thing on the bike is like, you've seen me on a Natchez Trace when we go on a 60 mile or something, I can just throw down, but that's about like my limit sometimes. And that's when it falls apart. I kind of like, well, I feel good at 60. I'll probably feel fine at 112. And then, around mile 80 in the race, I'm kind of like, what was I thinking?
That's right. Well, maybe I do. Yeah. Well, no, I think again, like it goes back to people being so familiar and comfortable with a specific discipline that they take it for granted. In that so many times as well, like we don't put ourselves in very uncomfortable situations, and what oftentimes is our strength, because we're like, see, we kind of do these, like you might find yourself, if you are identifying with this like concept or this, honestly, this struggle, is you'll do like periodic check-ins. Yep, still got it.
Yeah,
Like you know what I'm saying, like that. That's what it
Gotta
sounded
get
like to me
right
when
in
you're
it,
like,
see if I still
you're like,
got
yeah,
it.
you're like a mile 50, mile 60. Oh baby, yep, still got it. And then you're like, and then you kind of like pedal off, and you're like, yeah, I'm good. And then you're like, you realize like mile 80 of the race, in Ironman, you're like, oh shit, I've got 32 more miles left and a full marathon. Crap, And so I think that again, there's just so much. Again, like in the sport, it's a cascading effect, and as a coach this year, I've spent so many times around just watching races and not participating this year. You can see people coming out of the water how totally spent they are.
I know.
Like
That's like, yeah.
I'm like, how in the world are you going to gather yourself? And again, like, and some things are more shiny, and but again, like it's just there is no reason for you as an athlete to ignore the race in its total form, which is swim, bike, run. And I will, like, I get feedback, and I will always probably as well, is like, why are we swimming so much? Why are we swimming so much? Why are we swimming so much? It's because I want you to get on the bike to feel like you never swam. So you can bike comfortably at a power that you've earned and a fitness that you've worked hard to achieve, so that you can then get off your bike feeling like you can run your best, not survive, not just struggle your way through, not walk it, but run it. And if you think about it that way, and you think about all the dominoes that have to fall, and all the things you have to go through, and the nutrition, and the pacing, and the fitness, just from when you put your goggles and your cap on, and the gun goes off, and you get in the water, all the things that happen before you put on your run shoes, if you can get through all of those and you can put on your run shoes and think, even just mentally, right? Because one of the philosophies that I think we carry is we run a lot, we run very often. We just don't do like insanely really long runs. Would you rather be an athlete who puts their shoes on and feels totally fresh, ready to run as hard as they can, not just physically, but they're mentally and emotionally still feel? Because I think sometimes, again, we talk about energy expenditure from a physical standpoint. And what we don't, I think, take into account sometimes as athletes is the emotional, mental toll that, again, taking those punches on the bike, at some point in the run, you're going to take a punch too, and it's going to be your knockout. It's going to be your knockout punch. You might take the jabs, but it's like you want to be able to get to the 10th round, which is the run, and be just total clean. No scratches, no blood, no nothing. Your gloves are fresh. You're ready to duke it out versus being totally fried, taking, gut shot after gut shot, uppercuts here, and you're barely able to defend yourself. Finally, you're going to get that one final blow, and you got nothing left. So just think about that. When you're preparing this year and you're looking at your season, and you're like, I can just keep neglecting the pool, neglecting the pool, neglecting the pool, neglecting the pool. It all has its effect. And as much as you want to focus on your bike, no matter what, even if it's an easier swim, 70.3, Olympic, full, whatever, if you get to that point, you're going to go into those with energy that is gone, energy that has been wasted, and now you're going to be behind the 8 ball trying to put out an 85% effort what's going to get you a 75% return on the bike, and they're going to get off the bike, getting ready to head into the run, feeling totally run down and tired, knowing you could run this, but you've already emptied a half tank of gas. So you have very little bit left. And now you have to pace yourself, coasting here, being in neutral here, and just to get yourself to the finish line without running out of gas completely. So start the run with a full tank of gas and do what you need to do to prep the engine and take care of it to make sure it's ready to roll when you get done swimming and cycling.
Yeah, man, I'm going to start practicing my rope-a-dope.
You're right.
So I'm clean until round 10.
That's it, man.
Just turn it on. And that's the other thing, right? Is like you get off the bike and there's this false sense of energy, that we get because you're moving, your body's finally moving and all that kind of stuff, and that's where I think we get, even if I was saying even we pace it, but like we fall into that trap on the bike, and then you come off on the run, you're like, all right, I'm going to pace this run, but then you come out and you just kind of feel good because you're off that bike, and the next thing you know, you've just done the same thing. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, I think just the mentality alone that you can have when you come running out of transition, not running scared, not wobbling like a baby deer, not dreading the death march that you're about to partake in because you paced poorly or didn't train right, but excited to run. Like that feeling alone is something that you can't buy. And it's something that has to be worked for and created within you in terms of your fitness you've gotten in training and the pacing you did. But that feeling, I would venture to say 15, 20% of athletes on race day actually have that feeling. They exit T1 with I just got to make it through this instead of I'm going to race this.
Yeah,
and that's a mentality you have to have. And again, it's there. It can be there physically, but if you've taken so many body shots on the bike and on the swim, that even if you want to run it, you have to have the mentality of I can go for it instead of I don't know how many more of these I can take. So again, it's all mental, but it all comes in practice through training and through consistency and through time and through effort and through just paying attention to things you need to pay attention to when it comes to addressing your weaknesses, maximizing your strengths, and taking into consideration that the race itself is 3 sports together. They're all connected and they all impact each other equally, if not greater, as the day goes on.
Mm-hmm. So did we go into another one of yours, or do you got the second one?
Yeah, no, I got the second one, and I think this is it's probably the anti-training takeaway, But, as I kind of referred to earlier this podcast and on, if you've been listening for, the majority of our podcasts, is that, I raced 0 this year. I raced a lot in 2018, I think it was. God, it seems like forever ago. July was my last triathlon in Ohio, but I had one of my arguably my best year as a triathlete. But I think one of the biggest takeaways I had this year as an athlete was, and I think I've just honestly figured it out here, and I think I've discussed this the last couple of weeks in various forums, is that it's okay to listen to life telling you to take a break or to change things up. And I don't mean just like being a lazy sack, because I can tell you from personal experience here in the last 6 months, I refused to listen to what life is telling me. Obviously, with coaching and with dedicating more of my time to doing the best that I can, with moving to Chattanooga, with other things and going to races, my time thinned out, and then my priorities shifted. And while those were happening and I recognized those, I was listening to them in one ear, and then the other ear I was basically trying to silence out you don't have the time. If you want to do all of these things really well, or you want to use these, few things really well, then you have to give up these. And that meant, 4-hour bike rides on a Friday when I need to be working and doing things, and I don't want to give up my weekends. And I spent 2 or 3 months ignoring those conversations, ignoring those signs, by trying to basically force feed myself. It's interesting because I think parenting and teaching and coaching are all very similar, in that rationalizing, and I see this so many with the athletes I work with, is that rationalizing with the triathlete in training is a lot like rationalizing with a toddler. And you can want to, when Hayden, we have a 3-year-old, when Hayden is like really, really upset, if we react upset back to him, he gets increasingly upset. Mm-hmm. If he is angry and then we lose our temper, he loses his further. It doesn't solve it to combat it or force it. You have to basically listen and understand and then work through. And what I was doing for basically through our move and our transition, like June, July, and August, I was trying to force feed triathlon training and that time investment into what I had already kind of physically promised I was going to commit to. And it turned into a wash, so it turned into nothing. And when I finally had to basically just accept and kind of come around, we had that podcast thing called we're always late to our own party. Finally, when I was like, hey, you know what? I can't accept the invitation to the triathlon party this year, even though I've been trying to beat down at the door to a party I'm not invited to. I can accept an invitation to running. And since doing that, it has made my life significantly better. I've been the happiest I've been. I don't know how long. I've been the least stressed that I've been, and I can't remember how long. It has nothing to do with not doing triathlon, but it has everything to do with me accepting my life with where it is and my ability to train and what that looks like. And yes, realistically and honestly, could I scale back and train 5 to 6 hours a week, swim, bike, run? Absolutely. But that's just not who I am. That's not how I'm wired. I like to do things and I like to be challenged and do it well. And for me, with having been in the sport for so long, I would feel like I was just kind of participating. I like to be challenged, so I was able to pick up a new challenge in trail running, and obviously living in Chattanooga makes that really easy. But I guess the biggest thing I learned, obviously, was just to be really open and honest with yourself, in that you can either force feed it to where you're doing nothing and basically like take life and your training and just kind of butt heads like 2 bulls or 2 rams and go nowhere, or you can just go along with it and you can get better and things can be happier and you can feel more fulfilled and you can get more fit. Because I think one of the things we always confuse, and I was having this conversation earlier with another athlete, was that just because you're not doing, one of the 3 sports or 2 of the 3 sports that are in triathlon, doesn't mean you're not staying fit or getting fitter. Because we've talked about this on numerous occasions, how the three sports complement each other, and the fitness that you do just isn't canceled out because you are doing another sport. Like, you can run 3 times a week, and if you bike 5 times a week and you're doing VO2 sessions, or you're doing a lot of high intensity stuff, that fitness translates to when you run. You don't just go run and your body's like, whoa, 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 Mike, we're not biking. We need to shut down this and shut down this and shut down this. We are not allowed to use these because we are running and we are not cycling. It doesn't work like that. Like, are there specifics that you have to do to, across all three to make them different and to maximize your potential in both three disciplines? Absolutely. But the basic fitness level you need is probably like 70% the same. It's this, you're using the same lungs, the same heart, the same muscles. You're just using them in a slightly different way. And so you can't look at it as you're giving it all up. You have to do it as, I'm still getting fit. It's just I'm being more specific in a certain area. And I think if you can look at it that way, not just to make your life a lot easier to manage and be happier with it and not fight it and accept it and work with it, I think you'll find a balance that is more true to what you're probably looking for. And so I think, if we're just trying to sum it up into what did I learn, it's that, you need to accept the season of life you're in, and you can either choose to basically hibernate in it by forcing things, or you can work through it in a way to live in it and have fun with it. And that's what I find myself just now doing, negative splitting the year here the last 3 months versus what I was trying to do the first probably 6 to 7.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least you did it, man. That's interesting what you're saying there about, well, it's not new or anything, but the bike fitness transferring to the run, and back to sort of my last thing was the bike being not my weakness, but wanting to get that going. So, it would be so awesome for me right now, because I'm sort of in that similar place that you were last year. I am not really thinking about races. I've been talking about getting my body back into non-sore and flexible and limber sort of position. So this idea of cycling a lot kind of intrigues me, other than the fact that I don't really like cycling that much. So it has a challenge to it, but I could really see that. And there is something about getting into a groove on a trainer, I know, and just really getting into a bike groove in general that really sort of gives you that power motor. Mm-hmm. And that's just, it's been in the back of my mind, this idea, because I've been running mostly since Ironman Wisconsin, exclusively almost. And I wonder if it's time to bite the bullet and just maybe get a little more focused. I'm not saying I'm going to be doing crits or anything like that, but I don't know if I have to do anything really. But the idea of really, putting out some hard hours, consistently, sounds pretty intriguing on some level.
I think one of the reasons people enjoy having a power meter, outside of the fact that it has so many benefits in training and then obviously in racing, is that you can be specific and you can be engaged. And I think this time of year, one of the biggest reasons why people kind of gravitate towards things like Trainer Road or Zwift or whatever it is that training inside will crush you. If you have this is you have a very short attention span sometimes, is that you get sidetracked, you get bored, and you need something to engage you. You need something to, if you don't have the energy to grab at it and to, because some people can, listen, there's some people who could hop on a treadmill and run 20 miles. There's some people who can do 6-hour train rides. And there's some people who literally will pull their hair out after an hour and think, I honestly can't do this anymore. And so there's kind of a huge difference there in personalities, that it's not that they can't, it's that they just don't feel like I don't think they're just not engaged enough, or they don't feel at a place with their training that their investment, which for some people like you who have, who might not have the greatest attention span, or who just don't like to be they just need more stimulus. So if you don't feel like you're getting the stimulus that you need, to me and to the athlete, and maybe you're not getting your return on the investment, which is, I'm taking my time to go sit on my bike on a trainer and do this and not have any idea what's going on right now. Yes, I'm not going to do this. Yes, this sucks. Yes, please pass. But if you can get a power meter, you can hop on Zwift, or you can hop on Trainer Road, and you have something specific to check your boxes. 1, 2, 3, warm up, interval 1, interval 2, interval 3, so on down the line. Cool down, done, check. Bam, I can see it, it's done. I can see exactly what I did. I see exactly what it's worth, and this is exactly how it went. Then you can start to maybe see a better return on investment from your time. Because again, when you get stuck inside right now, which is what most people are doing, stuck on the treadmill for some people, or choosing to be on the treadmill, stuck inside for a lot of people basically just because they have to. And if you don't see that return, or you can't see something to grab your attention and to focus on almost every second of the workout, then you're going to feel lost, you're not going to feel engaged, and therefore you're going to get bored. And if you're bored, you're not going to want to do it. And I think that's where a lot of people fall this time of year when they look to, I don't want to call them entertainment, but it is. So many of these apps and new media-driven digital worlds people can bike in. It's training, but it's training you by entertaining you. It's intertraining is what it is. And I think that's something that, again, I'm not trying to poo-poo it. I'm just saying that it has its place because people need to be entertained to be inside for that long period of time to put forth effort. Some people do, some people don't. Some people can just put their head down and put in their earphones and zone out and take their mind to a different place. And some people can't. It's not positive or a negative for either. It's just understanding who you are and what you need. And I think, again, like when you look at this time of year and people are starting to, formulate their plans for 2020 and fix all the things that were wrong, it's like you have to have an innate understanding of not just the things that you struggle with, but why you struggle with it. Like, you can't ask yourself too many whys. Why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? You have to continue to go down. And so it's not, well, why? It's not, well, I hate it just because I don't like it. That's not an answer. Okay, that's a cop out. It's not because I don't like it.
Come on, man, that's my answer.
It's not your answer. It's the poor answer.
I already said it was my answer.
Well, it's not. It's not your answer. It's like, well, why don't you like it? Well, I don't like it because, okay, well, why don't you like that? Or if you don't like that, then what do you need to be able to like it? Or, so again, you have to ask yourselves these layered questions to finally get down to the root of, like, okay, this is I actually can like it. I just don't have access to the things that I need to like it. And I think that's one of the things that's like why most people don't, go to football games anymore. It's because they can get the best experience sitting on their couch, and they can remove all the things they don't want to remove. And that's the same thing with cycling and all this entertainment, is that people don't have to worry about cars and people and time and all the things. Like, so I get it. I get the fact that it's a good positive thing. I think you need to get outside a lot too. But, so again, come to grips and be objective and analyze yourself on things that you're not good at, you don't like, but then ask yourself further, why am I not good at that? Okay, I'm not a good swimmer this year. Okay, well, why aren't you? Well, I didn't swim enough. Why didn't you swim enough? Well, because when I did swim, I wasn't seeing, a good return. I wasn't getting faster. Or when you went and swam, what were you doing? Oh, I was only swimming like 1,000 or 2,000, just kind of just going back and forth. And I didn't have any sets, and I did a couple drills here and there, and just kind of time stayed the same. Okay, well, do you think if you had a structured plan with your swim workout that gave you a specific thing to do that was short, that was hard, and you had an objective for every time, do you feel like that would be more engaging? Oh, yeah, sure it would be. Do you think you do it more often? Yeah, probably would. So you're telling me that you actually could get better at swimming and that there's a way to get you better, you just have to do something differently. Okay, sure, yes, there is. That's how you need to go about fixing whatever, not fixing, seems like a little too intense maybe, but like that's how you should go about addressing the things you feel like you need to improve on. Not just, I'm just not good at it, or I'm never going to be good at it, or I don't like it. That's not going to cut it. You need to ask yourself these further questions, like I just kind of went through that little swim dialogue, is that there's always an answer in there if you're willing to work yourself to it. But then once you get those answers, now you have to apply it.
Yeah. It is. That's one of the tough ones, man. A lot of times it's just that getting through the initial stage of it too. It's tough to get back in. I haven't been on my bike much since Ironman Wisconsin, to be honest. And
well, I mean, I think
just getting through that first couple weeks, but then I can turn it on. That's when I turn into focus guy. Once I can feel better, a little bit more command. That was sort of one of my next ones. Is that what I learned, like at Chattanooga, is how to, at least in a half, be in control of the course and not let the course control me. And I think that's a lot of what training's about too, is like when you can get on there and you have something that's maybe a little bit over your head, and in the beginning that means most things if you're trying to get back into shape, then you got to stay within it. And sometimes that's boring, but boring is a long-term answer.
Boring is a long-term answer. We should definitely not use that as a promo flyer for our podcast. Guess what, guys? All these other triathlon podcasts, mate, top 10 ways to take 35 minutes off your 70.3 time, or these top 5 nutrition tips will help you have your best Ironman ever. Crushing Iron. Boring is life. Life is boring. It's like, no,
life is a show, man.
Life is, it's true, man. But no, it goes back down to consistency, and I think so many times, like, what's the most underrated aspect is just getting people to work. And again, like, I go back to what I said earlier about training triathletes is also a lot like training toddlers. It's like, or being in sales, or getting your spouse to agree to something. It's like, so much of it is approaching it and getting across in a way that they don't know what they're doing. It could be something they didn't used to hate, or like that. That's one of my favorite things as a coach, right? Is three things. Or really two, I guess, is when someone says, I've never been this consistent. And then the other one, which I think is a precursor to that, and a reason for the consistency, is I never knew I could like this.
Mm-hmm.
I could like running. I never knew I could like swimming. I never knew I could like cycling. Because again, it's not so much about the entertainment, it's finding out how people are wired and what makes them tick. And if you can do that, and you can put things in because everyone, like, sometimes we get ribbed on, or I do specifically, because I give a lot of analogies. But the more analogies you give, the more opportunities you allow for people to absorb it in a phrase, or in a way, or with a certain vocabulary that they can actually understand, that it makes it click. And that's how training is. You have to deliver things, hopefully, in a manner that's easily digestible to the athlete. If the athlete looks at a training session, or looks at a training block, or looks at a week and thinks, how the F does this make sense? I have no idea what's going on right now. Then they're not going to be as bought in. And if they're not bought in, they're not going to produce the results that you want via their effort and via their execution. Because if you don't believe in something, you're not going to have the effort. Right? You're not going to believe in the process. You're not going to be consistent, because you're going to have doubts. You have to be totally bought in. It kind of goes back to, honestly, what you were saying about, being not uninvested in cycling, but kind of, not entertained or lacking the stimulus. It's like, well, I don't know what I'm getting out. So, I mean, if I can't see a return or feel good about what I'm doing, or I can't get past the boredom, it's like, how do you find a way to reshape that into, let's do this to make it create, because sometimes you have to make something fun in order to get people, or seem fun, in order to get people to do it. And then if you can, that's all teaching is, and schooling and working with kids, is like, you do things that has to do with learning and shaping how they think, and problem solving in ways that are fun. Not, here, let me drill this to you with like textbook style, with the most boring, stale voice ever, and then expect you to retain this information. It's so much about how you deliver it. It's so much about how you lay it out. And so many times, like, in a very confusing triathlon, well, it's not confusing, what can be such a chaotic and noisy triathlon training world, the best way to do it is just to apply things that are simple. And if you can keep things simple, and you can keep things easy, as I think that's one of the reasons why that How to Not Suck at Running podcast was so popular, is because it laid things out so easily and so attainable that people were like, oh, not just I want to do that, but it was I can do that. And I think removing that barrier of skepticism and worry and stress that you can't, or I won't, or I won't see the results, and putting it into a very digestible, easy to understand, everyone can do this format, I think that's how you allow yourself to really be successful, is engaging in those opportunities and putting those out there as much as possible. And I think that's where people learn. It's through those things.
Let me ask you this, man. You're running a lot. Do you what's the feeling you get, say the night before you're going to go running? Is it kind of like, I'm excited to go run in the morning? It's kind of like Christmas a little bit. Do you still have that? Is it like sort of an exciting? Well, usually for me, running is the one event that gets me in that state of mind. It's like I sort of look forward to running for some reason.
I mean, to be honest, I did have that feeling on Christmas Eve. But that's just because it was, going to be Christmas. But it was.
I still had that, man. I didn't have it, dude.
No, it's it's interesting. I think I discussed this on a couple podcasts ago when I talked about not running with, headphones or something. Is that let me rephrase this in the true way that I'm actually thinking it. Is that I'm excited for my time. And I could go for a walk and still be happy about it. I could walk my dog. I could go sit still. I could go outside. And if I'm doing all those things and I don't have my laptop and I don't have my phone and I'm not being distracted, then that's the time right now that I look forward to as a father, as a husband, as a human, as a guy, as an athlete. It's the fact that I can, like I did, I think yesterday, I went out and I left my phone in the car. I went and parked at the trailhead and I ran for 2 hours and had no music. I had no phone with me. It was that feeling of freedom for me in a world now to where you're always able to be got, tugged, tagged and, alerted, notifications, calls, the temptations to take a selfie at every single boulder you run by. Like, they're all there. I'm like, I'm not trying to hate on people who do that, because if I had my phone on me, guess what? I'd probably stop 3 times to take a selfie. Or not a selfie, but I'd take a picture of the rock. I'm not a selfie guy.
That one boulder is sweet.
It is. There's that one boulder that's kind of cute. But what I'm saying is that I like the limited distractions, because we now live in a world where that the distractions are more than they've ever been. And so many people, myself included, I struggle with the boundaries of allowing those distractions to interfere with who I really am and want to be at a certain moment. And running for me right now is the time where I can disconnect and be exactly who I want to be and go through all my thoughts and through all my feelings, through all my worries, through all my positive thoughts, and go through this. It's the same thing that I think people get when they go swim. If they leave their phone in their bag and they don't, it's like, that's when you can get your thoughts and no one can look at you, no one can talk to you, no one can kind of bother you. It's your own time in your own head. And I know a lot of people don't like that, but I do, and I need that. And so that's what I think right now gets me so excited about running, is that, if I'm working out inside and I was hopping on the bike trainer, emails going off, phones going off, everything. It's all everything, and everything's connected. And so that's why I think I've kind of gravitated towards running. It's not that I'm and to be honest, now that you've asked me that, I think it's not so much that running was the thing that I had the most time for. I think running provided me the outlet that I've needed the last 6 months to do myself a favor and get away and refresh myself and take care of myself. I think that's what running has opened the door, and I was kind of trying to make it something else, and I was like, oh, well, this actually gonna be a pretty good relationship right here. So, but no, I do. I get excited about it. I don't ever dread it. I just do it because I right now I'm craving that time. That's just my own. Again, in a world where if you're married and you have kids and you work and you have life and you basically have access to everything, you're touched. You can be touched and tagged 24/7.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, that's just interesting to me, because I don't want to say there's no payoff, because there obviously is, but a lot of times, I think about craziest stuff, how we evolved as humans, and how you spend all day out, on the hunt or gathering, food and things like that, and then you come back and the payoff is the meal, right? And then, so we have sort of substituted in. We're sedentary people now, and we've got everything kind of taken care of for us in that regard, survival-wise. And suddenly we have to create other ways to expend energy and to move the body and use it for, what it's meant for. And but, if that means just getting on a bike for an hour and a half and looking at a screen, I just think sometimes that doesn't satiate you, And it may feel good and everything like that, but there's if you don't have some kind of tangible payoff sometimes, and I think that's probably why most of us sign up for races, to keep that, feeling in our heads, and it's sort of out there. That's the pot of gold, so to speak. And if we don't do this, we're not going to, so there's this weird, I guess, thought process in there for me, especially if I'm not deciding I want to do races or whatever. But for me, that's why I run, is because running kind of gives me that different sort of gratification for some reason than anything else. And
Well, I think going back to that same concept, though, in terms of like staring at a screen might not do it for you.
Mhm.
Doesn't do it for me. But I think what needs to be said, and I think it's very true for so many athletes who use these kind of mediums to do training sessions and stuff, is kind of going back to what you said about the bike, is that if it gets you on it, then so many times, this used to be me too, like I would hop on and I would watch a Netflix movie, or I'd put some intervals on there, and if it got me excited enough to get on the bike to do it, I would find myself losing myself in whatever it is I needed to work through. I just needed to find a way to push myself towards giving myself that opportunity.
Yeah,
And,
100%.
and so like,
That's a transitional.
right,
That's
yeah,
the transition we talk about.
it's like getting yourself on the bike, or it's putting on your shoes. So I think that what you just said about not liking the bike right now, it's like, well, what if you got, because you tell us all the time, like the hardest part about running is just putting your shoe on, getting out the door. And so for a lot of people, it's like, if you can have that piece that's entertaining, that excites you, that at least gets you on the bike to get going, then I think it's when you find yourself kind of falling into how, in terms of like, working through what you need to work through. And then that's sometimes, I think, the connection that you need. It's, you can use these things that might not, in your own eyes, connect you to what you're trying to, but it can be the stepping stone to get you there. And I think that's what that has to be said. I think it's what also allows people to achieve all these great things in terms of working through themselves with these screens up and doing, is that if it gets you on the bike or it gets you on the treadmill, eventually at some point you're going to lose yourself in your own thoughts. And I think that is a positive thing. And again, this time of year is where people are starting New Year's resolutions. Whatever it takes to get you out the door, if you're a person like a fitness journey, you're doing whatever it takes you to get out the door, whatever it takes to get you moving, whatever it takes you to pick up that first weight or to take that first step on the treadmill, who cares? That's why there's a million different, varieties of methods of lifting and training and running and swimming and cycling and, body pump and, body jazz and jazzercise and CrossFit and, whatever it is. Like, there's so many opportunities out there because there's so many different people and there's so many things that people need to actually just get them moving in the right direction. And so, take that mentality and put it back into, your own self and like, all right, what do I just need to get going? And whatever it is you need to get going, do it. And then eventually things will adapt over time, and you'll, what you need to be driven will also change. And I think that's something that we could always pay attention to, is understanding and knowing what we need specifically as a human, as a person, as an athlete, as a father, as a whatever, a spouse, wife, mother, daughter, to get us out the door, to drive us, is one of those things that you can have in your back pocket every day, because you can always kind of roll back on that and think, all right, well, what is it today? Is it I want to qualify for Kona? Is that I want to finish my first Ironman? Is it I want to do this for my son? Is it I want to set an example to my parents? Is it I want to prove somebody wrong? Is it I want to live my best life? Whatever it is, those are things you can always kind of pull out and use on the days that you're struggling. And so whatever you need to get you to where you want to go, or at least to get your shoes on, or to get you on the bike, or to get you in the pool, use it.
Yeah, and that's a sort of a trigger I like to try to create myself, because sometimes I'm really good at that. I'm just like, all right, I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it. You just you just dive right in. You just kind of don't let that thought process even happen, and sort of like getting out of bed or doing whatever. You just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's just do it.
It's just part of you. Make that stranger part of you.
I mean, yeah, you just walk into the fire, and then it becomes a habit. And that's usually what happens, right? It's this time of the year, things get tough, and it's really hard to get motivated. And then all of a sudden, something about the calendar flipping, at least, because then it's triathlon season, a lot of us have races out there, then it just sort of starts happening. and then it becomes habit, and then we get out of habit, and then we get back in, and whatever. And the habit part of it is the I guess, the secret.
Hey, it's that's life, is that there's so many things to be to distract us / entertain us, that in about a month what gets you out the door might totally change and now be boring. So you're gonna need something new. But I think we all have those like innate feelings and thoughts that truly get us moving, get us out. But again, whatever it is, the sport's supposed to be good for you. It's supposed to be positive. It's supposed to have a good impact on you, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. So whatever it is, pay attention to that, lean into it, and hey, get ready to have a good year.
Get ready to have a good year.
Get ready to have a good year. Don't focus on a great year. Just have a good year, man. Start with good, end with great. Don't go backwards.
Couple quick ones. We won't even have to talk about them. I'll just say them. And this might be a good time of year for a lot of people who have been struggling to get running. But after Ironman, my walk-run strategy helped rejuvenate my zeal for running. That's another good way to do it. I think it makes it more enjoyable and something that doesn't feel so insurmountable.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a break, and it's just been nice. That it's really kept me running. And then the other thing that I felt like was a pretty big one was when we went to Wisconsin and the water was pretty choppy, and I learned to be ready to be more aggressive and increase my stroke rate instead of trying to just cruise through a swim. It's just face. We could go on to that for a while, but we don't have to. But I just wanted to point that out. That's what I learned.
My last one was all you need is a pencil and a piece of paper. Since I started run training, I've gone back to just a spreadsheet. Obviously, that's not pencil and paper, but I am doing all my training in making notes and writing things out on a spreadsheet. No training peaks. No, I'm not a Strava guy, but I'm not doing any of it that way. I'm laying it out strictly on a spreadsheet.
I like that.
Yep. Which is probably gives like people total like anxiety and.
I know, man. Pen to paper.
It's like, what you got? It's, oh my God, I have. Like, well, I don't. Like, it's about work. It's about listening. And so for me, it's helped me. It's actually helped me write more things down and be able to see it in a much easier format. For me to kind of look down at the whole week in like one glance and see every single comment that I made. Versus having to click on specific workouts like you do in Training Peaks. But I've gone back to not so much pen and paper, but there's no data to look at. It's just the mileage, how it felt, what pace it did, occasionally elevation, back to basics. And it's again, I think anytime you can strip things down to its most simplest form, that's it. I think it also allows for you to gravitate, and I think that's why a lot of people are afraid of triathlon, because it can seem so confusing and so overwhelming. And like we talked about, I think in the last podcast, that's why running has, I think, seen such a huge uptick as it can be, even though some people like to overcomplicate everything, is it seems so simple. Pair of run shoes, get out the door. Triathlon, you worry about, having the right bike and the right fancy helmet and the right wetsuit and the right goggles and the right bike shoes and the right bottle cages and the right aero bars and the right, mile. They're doing a power meet. What kind of power meet do I need? Do I need run shoes? Do I need, fancy run shoes? Do I need a race belt? Do I need a race belt? Do I need a Camelback? What do I need? It's just, simplify. And triathlon can be simple is the thing. Like, it can be simple. And I think that's one of the biggest tickets is to not make this list if you're a triathlete. You're doing your New Year's resolutions, your list for 2020 is don't make a list that's going to make your triathlon life harder or more complicated or add things to it. Because most triathletes that I talk to or that I start working with it's like hey, I want to color a picture real quick, and they bring you like the 480 Crayola pack. And you're like, whoa, this is too overwhelming. Dude, give me a red, a blue, a green, and an orange, and I'm set. That's all you need, because you open up the box and you're like, I have what is this? Tangina Menta? Spearmint? It's like, no, I don't even, is this even orange or is this green? I have no idea. So you get super confused. So just like keep it simple, break it down that way. And if don't make a list that's going to make things more stressful, make a list that for some might just remove more, which for a lot is removing stress. Make that your goal. That's it. We can end on that. Make that one of your goals for 2020 to remove any chaos or stress from your life. And that goes for like non-triathlon related too. Remember, it's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to enjoy this. And as always, we hope you have a healthy and happy new year.
Yes, I would like to say the same.
Yeah, and
C26triathlon.com is where you can go to check things out.
Our new website is awesome. Got a lot of great feedback on it. But yeah, it is everything. It is our one-stop shop for everything you need to know about training, coaching, everything you got. It's there. C26triathlon.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can hit up Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can always reach out to me directly, C26coach@gmail.com. All right, dude. Check you later.
See you, man. Thanks.